This is one of my escapements that I was inventing. It has a nearly infinite ratio of gear degrees, similar to, well, lateral acceleration degrees, right? Gravitational acceleration degrees, whatever they use in watchmaking. I haven't thought about it in a while. It's really expensive to build, but the way it works, I call it a reverse Swiss escapement. And so here is your locking, wow, I'm forgetting terms. So this is your escapement wheel, escapement arm, right? And your balance wheel. So this is something called a gyroscopic balance wheel, I think. It returns force on any axis. So as these, because this is designed to rotate oppositely of a balance wheel compared to a Swiss escapement. And it's kind of like a tourbillon in a way, and I was going to use this housing to make various forms of tourbillon, flying and triaxial. The whole thing was going to be designed so that it doesn't ever replicate the same position of wear and gravitational force. It's pretty intense to figure all this stuff out. You have to design your own geometry, which just figuring this geometry out took forever. But so it locks inwardly as opposed to a Swiss escapement, which this is the same axis as the escapement wheel and locks like that. Well, this locks on the frame arms, and these are sort of curved, and so this comes down, locks, and this rotates back and forth. As it unlocks, it applies force through here, which acts on this housing here. This accelerates, this actuates the arm, locking the wheel. This then flies and comes back, unlocking, unlocking, and reciprocating, and then changing degrees. I mean, these are so small. When I did the calculations of gear variations, it was something like 24 zeros after. There's more degree variations for gravitational force than there are days left in the universe. And so I wanted to make it modeled after, I don't know. It is what it is. The gyroscope balance wheel, gyroscope balance sphere, there you go. That thing alone is ridiculously complicated. It's got this framework that goes in between every ring, and every ring has to be calculated to a specific mass so that the force applied and the hairsprings that I was going to incorporate into these joints, receive and distribute the mass and inertial energy. And this is one of my escapements. I have others. see, escapement 3. That one might be my carriage. Let's see. But this one, I was going to design it to walk around the face of the watch. It's going to be really cool. This is my carriage escapement. I was designing this so that I didn't have to use a hairspring, because making them is notoriously difficult. And so it was going to be purely mechanical in its own right. Or it could use leaf springs. That was another thing. It could also function off leaf springs. It has 2 separate locking wheels. These are your escapement wheels. So this sort of rotates, that applies rotation to this. Well, at least spring tension applies force to this, which causes this to rotate. This locks on your gears that drive these in one direction. That then lock on this. This is your arm. So this locks in here and locks in here and goes back and forth. And the whole thing is designed to rotate in a circle. And this is the reader on your face. This was what I was going to display for you. And these are your balance wheels. That's right. So force comes in after rotation, and then depending on how many you have, because there was another version of this I was working out in my head, that 2 of these with a gear in between, so that as this comes out and rotates, that rotates, another gear in the opposite direction, and then applies that same force. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of friction in that, and a lot of force applied, and the pinions are going to be under a lot of stress. And the main flaw with this design is it works great in theory. It's really cool, I think. The only issue is unlocking the wheel. It has to be, so this would apply to an angular force, or I was working on other things in my head that I just gave up on eventually, because leaf springs for one thing. So you could attach this to a leaf spring, and it would, or you could use a hairspring, but it's not flying as much as a hairspring would, so why would you use a hairspring? So essentially you can use 2 leaf springs that apply the same force oppositely of one another, instead of storing energy as a hairspring pulses in and out outwardly. Hairsprings are really complicated. They're very difficult mechanism, extremely interesting, but this is one I gave up on, because this, as it unlocks, is going to have to apply force to an angled surface here, which then applies torque to the pinion. And so your pinion is going to have to be larger to absorb that force, which is going to stress parts, or it's going to be less accurate, which is why the Swiss escapement is so good. And then we have this. If it would load, these are really big files. And I think this one's my largest file. It has something like 40,000 different faces on it. Or maybe that's the propeller, or the engine. I don't know. It might freeze. This laptop's almost 10 years old. It has never missed a beat, though. It's the most reliable computer I've ever had. It just works. Don't save. I don't know why it wanted to ask me to save. Okay, this I think is the same reverse Swiss, but it's on a different way that I wanted to read, and was having trouble with figuring out how I could. So if you imagine the glass over that, all these gear reductions are where the energy is distributed to the heart that takes these beveled gears. These freaking things are menacing to design on AutoCAD. I had to teach myself how to do it, and it took forever because nobody makes this crap. So there's a lot of, and you can't have, so 3 obviously, right? I was gonna have to redo all the math, but so the main spring that applied force to here, which then drives all these, and goes to the center. And it was supposed to look like the escapement was floating, and it would be attached to glass and glass, which is why it's at a bad angle. Or I was gonna try to, let's see, get the locking wheel to drive on the glass. So there'd be a top glass and a bottom glass that each surface here drives, and that's what the force is distributed as. It's connected to this right here, that face. This is gonna be a really interesting one. It always works in my head, but there's always a flaw in my designs. And I think it's all of them on AutoCAD. I had 2 more different concepts for escapements, but I never designed them on here. The reverse Swiss escapement. You know, a lot of that older engineering, the Germans would always do things backwards. They put propellers on their planes on the rear rather than the front. They put their engines in the back. So it's fun to take one of their foundations that everybody finds perfect and do exactly the opposite, you know? It's, think of it like the Porsche 911 to a Corvette. The reverse Swiss escapement. Completely impractical. I think, yeah, this is just me reworking out all the geometry and doing gear ratios and other stuff. And a different design to locking and unlocking, and how to rotate the that's right. So this was, I can get into, I was doing a different method for it. It's still, or maybe this is a rotating Swiss sort of escapement. I think that's what this is, yeah. So I wanted to take the first one that I did, this, not this one, but the other one, the first one I mentioned, and I wanted to do it more like a Swiss escapement that could rotate in opposite directions. And so this like has to connect with the locking bars in here, which will rotate. Everything just rotates opposite of one another, which is not necessarily all original. Who knows? Other than that, this one's pretty cool. Before I'm done. 15 minutes already. Oh, this is the really simple one. This is a cool one. Cool ones want to eat up a lot of memory to load. And here we go. I never went to school to use this software. I mainly taught myself. Some stuff I had to look up though, like what I want to do, how to do it on this, because it's completely unintuitive. So this is a propeller impeller. So it takes an air here, takes an air here. There are coils through the center. I think I can make this all hollow, invisible. Opacity, where is that? I don't know. Well, there's coils in the middle here that'll meet, and they have these slits on the bottom, so air goes in, that's compressed at the top, comes out these here, these ones. Air then exhausts from my engine. You can see here. I think I deleted them, or maybe I didn't, I don't know. No, so you see I would come out here. The exhaust comes out here, comes in here, and comes out this. The whole point of this was so I could design a single stroke engine, which is more like a two-stroke. I didn't understand fully the whole definition, but it does exhaust and compression, pre-compresses, stores fuel mixture, and that with my drawings is for my other video. I mentioned that I did it on AutoCAD. I tried to 3D print this, it could not handle it. It took forever to figure out how to make a helic, or not even helic, this isn't helic, this is just a coiled Tesla valve. In here, in these coils that compress, so it flows this way, it flows this way. It has Tesla valves rotating in opposite directions. And it took forever to figure out too. The girl working at the library when I was designing this went to school for using AutoCAD. I would ask her and she had no idea what the hell I was trying to make. Anyway, that's it. Video's long enough.